come from Spain, and this is one of my weapons against COVID, but I don't need it now. And I want to tell you actually how we are going to conquer COVID and all diseases in the next 2 to 3 decades. Actually, I just published a book in Spanish, number 10 best-selling book in Spain called The Death of Death. In Spanish, La Muerte de la Muerte. It just came out also recently in Portuguese, and soon it's coming out in Russian, Chinese, and French. So I will give you a quick review of what is happening in terms of longevity around the planet. I work with many international groups, mostly with the Millennium Project that began as the futuristic part of the United Nations. And we look at the challenges of humanity during the next few years. And I had the pleasure to go to the World Economic Forum to talk about the scenarios for Latin America in the year 2030. And humanity is moving very fast demographically. In fact, if you look at the projections of the population of the planet, we are leveling off. The population of the planet actually is stabilizing, and in some places, actually, it is going down. The population of Russia, Japan, Spain, Germany actually has been declining, and it will continue to decline. So the problem is not too many people. The problem is not enough people in the future. So demographically, we have to worry about the future of humanity. But the good point, though, is that the economy is growing. And it's not just growing, it is growing exponentially. If you look at the scale of the GDP per capita, it is a logarithmic scale. That means an exponential growth of the economy. And this is incredible for the last 2 centuries, since economic development began with the Industrial Revolution in the United Kingdom. In England, it took 58 years for the first time in human history to double its income per capita. 58 years. But now this is happening faster and faster and faster. The world record today is China. China every 7, 8, 9 years doubles its income per capita. And this is fantastic news for humanity. There are no excuses anymore to be poor because we know what works and what doesn't work. And again, it all began with the Industrial Revolution. There was this very famous English economist, Malthus, who actually said that the world was overpopulated, that there were too many people, and that the human condition was poverty, disease, hunger, and early death. At that time, average life expectancy in the planet was only 30 years. 30 years. I think almost everybody here would be dead at that time. I would be dead almost twice already. But not only I am not dead, I do not plan to die because we are working towards rejuvenation technologies. And the world is changing very fast everywhere. For example, if you look at Shanghai, Shanghai used to be, until even the 20th century, relatively poor and backwards. And in the last few decades, it has been growing and growing and growing. But not all the planet is growing. Some people do not want to change, like the Amish. You might know about the Amish in North America. They actually emigrated from Europe in the 18th century, and they stopped using technology after the 18th century. They don't have electricity, they don't have computers, they don't have telephones. And that's what they want. They want to live in the 18th century. I grew up in South America. In South America, we have some Aboriginal groups that want to live as they lived 5,000 years ago. They don't want to use clothes. They don't want to speak modern languages. They don't want to speak Portuguese or Spanish. They just want to stay where they were thousands and thousands of years ago. And probably even when the wheel was invented about 5,000 years ago, there were some people who didn't want wheels, the anti-wheel movement. So there are always people against technology. Even in the United Kingdom, where the Industrial Revolution began, there were the Luddites who destroyed the machines because they said the machines would take away their jobs. So we need to be prepared about a technological world where there will be people opposed to some technologies. I come from Spain, which actually discovered the new world, as we say. And before the discovery of the America, the symbol of Spain was non plus ultra, nothing beyond Spain. Spain was the end of the world at the time. And that was the symbol of Spain. In fact, for the beach party tonight, I have my Spanish flag to talk about that. And if you see, it says non plus ultra. That was the old flag. Then America was discovered, and then we changed it to plus ultra. And now I say we need to change it again to Vita plus ultra. More Vita, and also Mars plus ultra, because we are going to go to Mars. Actually, I was a candidate to the European Parliament in the last election last year. I didn't make it this time, but I got several thousand votes in Spain. And my campaign was based on immortality and space travel. Let me show you one of the videos of the campaign.
Most political discourse is about details such as corporation tax rates, subsidies for farming, interminable trade negotiations, and who wrote what in which newspaper. But what if politicians are missing the things that really matter? Economist Robert Solow won the Nobel Prize in Economics for showing that 90% of economic growth comes from technology. Yet the EU's investment in artificial intelligence amounts to less than 1% of agricultural subsidies. What politics needs is people who understand how technology, like artificial intelligence, will develop. Jose Cordeiro is a technologist with degrees from MIT and a PhD in engineering, who has written best-selling books on how we can use technology as the ultimate force for good in society. Support Jose as member of the European Parliament this May. He will focus on how we can work together to build a better future for all of us by investing in technology like artificial intelligence, genetics research, and nanotechnology.
Let me show you also a video clip about going to Mars, because part of the strategy is going to Mars, and we have a facility in northern Spain where we are doing training to go to Mars. Fantastic experiencing 3 days on Mars and now landing back safely alive on planet Earth.
Una aventura, sinceramente. Algo totalmente diferente de lo que puedes encontrar fuera en el día a día. Es una experiencia que te saca totalmente de tu zona de confort. Está totalmente en otro mundo, digamos, y tienes que adecuarte, la mentalidad cambiarla y el día a día hacerlo diferente de lo que sería fuera. Entonces, realmente es otro mundo.
It was for me as a real candidate for a Mars 100 mission. I could really understand some issues that, for example, psychologists were talking about, and I really understand the importance of being open-minded and being able to solve all problems, because what we were doing for all the time there, it was troubleshooting and solving problem by problem just to make experiments working, another experiments working, something else working. And this was really great because this is what I like.
I feel absolutely great. It was a super great experience to be on Mars for 4 days. We were in a cave now, and then we always had those great moments every day where you went on an EVA. It's called an extravehicular activity, where you go out of the habitat where we were sleeping in, and then you were going out in the cave, and it just looked like Mars. Because in Mars you're allowed to live in the lava tubes, so it's perfect.
We can go for another 3 days. We can come.
Anyway, this is an incredible experience to tell you what technology will do for us. And yesterday, Elon Musk made an incredible announcement at the annual conference of the Mars Society that he expects to send the first humans to Mars in 4 years. We are going to go to Mars very soon, very soon. Anyway, we were training for a period of 3 months, and this is part of the things we learned in order even to discover life on other planets. And this was our habitat in a cave. Well, based on all of these ideas, there are technology parties being born. One very important in Germany. For those of you who understand German, Partei für Gesundheitsforschung, Research for Health, actually is the Immortality Party of Germany. They got 71,000 votes. And also in the USA, we have an Immortality Party, the Transhumanist Party, that did a campaign for the presidential election with an immortality bus, driving a coffin throughout the USA, leaving San Francisco and arriving at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. So all of these ideas are becoming reality, especially now in times of COVID, because if we look at COVID, COVID is related to age. It is basically killing people who are older. The main risk factor for COVID and for all diseases is age. Age is the #1 cause of death of humanity. However, COVID is nothing compared to other pandemia, absolutely nothing, very small. If we look at the Black Death, 200 million people died of a population of less than 1,000 million. Or even, as you can see, AIDS or the Spanish flu that was not from Spain, by the way. So COVID has killed about 1 million people, but it is very small in historic terms, also because the population of the planet is much larger. We are close to 8,000 million people, and just about 1 million people have died of COVID. However, the impact has been absolutely incredible. Just the US government has invested $2 trillion public money, and the private sector's billions and billions of dollars. Altogether, it is estimated that this pandemic, which is a small pandemic, will cost over $11 trillion. Imagine if we put all that money against the common enemy of all of humanity, which is aging and death. The enemy is not COVID. COVID is very small compared to aging and death. So every time more and more people are talking about this, because I repeat, aging is the #1 risk factor for all diseases, for influenza, heart problems, cancer. In fact, there are studies that show if we could cure cancer, all of cancers, we only get 3 more years of life, only, curing all cancer. If we cure all heart trouble, we get 4 more years of extra life. If we cure cancer and heart trouble, we get 7 more years. But if we cure aging, we get 30, 40 years, and we will get even more later on. So the common enemy is aging. And today, we need to move from the sick care to health care. And the real problem is aging. Aging is the mother of all diseases. All diseases really are centered about aging, but we have been treating them separately, not connected, in different silos. We need to treat them together, and the main enemy is aging. Based on this, a friend of mine from England, David Good, who invented the Symbian operating system that was bought by Nokia, he studied a PhD from Cambridge. I also studied in Cambridge, but Cambridge, Massachusetts at the MIT. 3 years ago, we decided to write a book about what is going to happen to aging in the next few years. So our book came out first in Spanish, La Muerte de la Muerte, then in Portuguese, A Morte da Morte, and soon in Chinese, Russian, and French, and then other languages. As I said, the book has been an incredible bestseller. In Spain, when it came out, was #1 and #5 best-selling book simultaneously. #1 in paper, #5 in Kindle, electronic format. The same in Brazil, in Portuguese. And we are donating all the money, 100%, for scientific research, half in the USA and half in Spain. Why Spain is important? Because Spain has the second oldest population in the world, only after Japan. But according to the OECD, Spain will have an even more life expectancy in 20 years than even Japan, because of the fantastic Mediterranean diet. So the situation in Spain is very critical, like this in Japan, or like it will be in China, that the population of China is expected to decrease 700 million people by the end of the century. It's an incredible amount. A decrease of 700 million people in China if the trend continues. But it will not continue because Japanese, Chinese, Koreans, East Asians, and other people are worried about aging. Anyway, Spain has incredible scientists like Maria Blasco, is the #1 expert probably in telomerase. She has been able to extend the life of mice almost twice with telomerase treatments. And another Spanish scientist, Juan Carlos Ispizua Belmonte, he is the deputy director of the Salk Institute in California. Using a technique invented in Japan, the Yamanaka factors, he has been able to rejuvenate mice. This has been done in the last few years using different treatments, so much that now we are talking that by the year 2045, we might become immortal. And this is based on the ideas of my friend Ray Kurzweil, also from my alma mater, from MIT, when he published his best-selling book, The Singularity is Near. And next year, he's publishing the continuation book, which is called The Singularity is Nearer. Nearer. And still we use the same date, 2045, for Immortality. I was one of the founding faculty of Singularity University in California, where I lived 5 years. And Singularity University, backed by NASA, Google, and many other companies, we basically talk about converging technologies towards the singularity. There are 4 major technologies that are converging. On the hardware side, on top, nano and bio, nanotechnology and biotechnology. And on the bottom, on the software side, we have 2 other technologies, info and cogno. And then we have 2 dates, 2029 and 2045. What will happen on the hardware side? On the hardware side, we expect that by 2029, we will reach the Methuselarity, the singularity or Methuselah, or longevity escape velocity. That means that in 10 years, we will reach longevity escape velocity, and that implies that for every year we survive, we get an extra year. So we will basically be almost immortal, but still aging, And the second date is 2045. In 2045, we are going to have rejuvenation technologies. And that is my goal, that is my interest, and people working on this. Because we don't want to be immortally old. We want to be immortally young. And we know this is possible thanks to the Japanese scientist Shinya Yamanaka, who rejuvenated old cells. Anyway, on the hard side, hardware, and on the software, Ray Kurzweil also talks about 2029, we will pass the Alan Turing test. Alan Turing test, that means that you will not know anymore if you are talking to a human or to a machine. And eventually, by 2045, we will have an artificial intelligence connecting all of humanity and with more intelligence than humanity. All of these technologies are changing exponentially, faster, smaller, cheaper, better things. Those of you who have my age will remember this, the IBM punch cards. This is what I used when I started taking computer classes. This is 1K of memory, 1K. It's 10 by 100 pieces of information, 1K. In Spanish, we say 1K. And then we had the first floppy disk, and this is real, 8 inches, and it was 1K. I like to say 1 mechanical K and 1 electromagnetic K gives 1 kaka. 1 kaka of memory we had 30 years ago. Fortunately, technology kept advancing, and we moved to better floppy disk, more memory. And today, for example, I have a pen drive, which is 1 terabyte. This is 1 terabyte. And I began with 1 kaka. This has happened in 30 years. What do you think will happen in the next 30 years? You are going to remember me, and you will remember kaka. But this will be kaka in 30 years. This, which is 1 terabyte, will be 1 terakaka. in 30 years. We will have devices smaller than these, more powerful than your brain, and connected to your brain. This is happening not only in computer science, it's happening in biology. The first human genome was sequenced in 2003. It took 13 years, from 1990 to 2003, and it cost just the US government $1 billion, and internationally, globally, $3 billion. 13 years, $3 billion. Today, you can sequence your genome for about a couple of $100 in a couple of hours. But we estimate it will go down to $10 in 1 minute. If you look at those numbers are truly, truly exponential twice. A few years ago, I went to visit Sir Arthur C. Clarke, famous for Space Odyssey 2001, and he's also famous for the 3 laws of the future. He said, when a famous scientist says that something is possible, he's probably right. But when he says it is impossible, he's probably wrong. Second law, the only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture past those limits into the impossible. And third law, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So we are going to see magic in the next few years because these things are changing exponentially. Futurists, we talk about 4 ways to think about the future. The worst way is to do like an ostrich and hide your head. Horrible. You don't want to see the future. You suffer the future. Horrible. Something a little bit better is to be reactive, like a firefighter that comes when there is an emergency. Much better is to be proactive. When you buy insurance, you get prepared. But the best thing is to be proactive, to create the future. And we can build the future. We can create the future. So I hope we don't have ostriches here, because biohackers are not ostriches. But if we have ostriches, they should be technological ostriches. All technologies are changing radically. I grew up in Venezuela, a country very famous for oil. The largest company in South America, actually, not just Venezuela, is Petróleos de Venezuela Sociedad Anónima, PDVSA. But Mickey Mouse, and I admire Mickey Mouse, as you can see my tie, and if you don't see my tie, you will see my ears. This is made from petroleum, Venezuelan petroleum. If you buy this in Disneyland, how much do you think this costs? This is $10. How many Mickey Mouse hats made of petroleum can you make from a barrel of oil? 1,000 Mickey Mouse hats, each one $10. 1,000 times 10 makes $10,000. And the barrel of oil is 50. Where is the business? The business is adding value, manufacturing to mind-facturing, to create with the mind. There are many, many examples, actually, of companies being disrupted completely. Everything will be disrupted. As we say, Uber yourself before you get Kodak. We need to change everything, business, all types of business, even government, financial sector are changing. You probably know that Uber is the largest taxi company in the world, and they don't own a car. Facebook, the largest media. Alibaba, merchandising, Airbnb, bigger than Hilton, and Marriott and Sheraton combined. And another recent example is Zoom. Zoom is bigger today than the largest 7 airlines in market capitalization. Incredible. So everything is changing. 30 years ago, personal computers were just starting. 20 years ago, cell phones were becoming popular. Nokia was the ruler of the world. 10 years ago, Google, Facebook were growing also internationally. But what is going to happen in the future? In 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years? We are going to see magical changes. One of those is immortality. Today, more and more people talk that aging is a disease, but it is a curable disease. The experiments I was mentioning, some of them done in Spain and in California, have been able to rejuvenate mice and make them live twice as long. We have mice today that live the equivalent of 200 human years. We have mosquitoes that live the equivalent of 400 human years. And we have worms that live the equivalent of 1,000 human years today. These are truly Methuselah worms, 1,000-year worms. This was done in the last few years. Think about what we are going to do in the next 10, 20 years. In fact, even more beautiful. Today, we know that there are immortal cells. How many of you actually know that cancer cells are biologically immortal? Actually, not that many. I would expect more people to know this, because this was discovered in 1951 when a patient called Henrietta Lacks died. Her cells just became 100 years old because she was born in 1920. Her cells, even though they are 100 years old, they look like teenagers. They have sex all the time, they reproduce all the time, they grow all the time, and they don't die of age or anything. Immortality actually has existed for a long time. But not only cancer cells are immortal, also germ cells. And all of you have germ cells. Your germ cells do not age in your body. Your body ages, the somatic cells, but the germ cells do not age. In your bodies, you have immortal cells. But not only cancer and germ cells are immortal, we have small organisms who are completely immortal, like hydras, medusas. These organisms can live forever, thousands of years, millions of years, if they are not killed by someone else or eaten. Okay, so immortality exists already in nature. And when people tell me that immortality is impossible, I say, how is it impossible when it already exists? Cancer cell didn't get a PhD in medicine, and cancer discovered how to become immortal. So now scientists are trying to understand what cancer did, why germ cells don't age, why hydras are immortal. And we are going to discover this in the next few years. My dear friend Aubrey de Grey revolutionized the world almost 20 years ago when he began talking about immortality. However, he was called a charlatan by the magazine of my alma mater, MIT Technology Review. They said he was nuts. 2005. 1 year ago, they asked forgiveness because now they say old age is over if you want it. Look at the radical change of mentality of the magazine of MIT, calling him nuts and now saying he was actually right. And this is coming in the next 10 to 20 years. As the German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said, all truth goes through 3 stages. First stage, it is ridicule. Second stage, it is opposed violently. And third stage, it will be accepted as self-evident. People who are working on this, we are so happy because we know we are on the right side of history. And time will give us the reason, and not next millennium, not next century, by 2045. And in that year that I plan to be alive, I also plan to be younger than today, because the objective is biological rejuvenation, which we know is possible. And at that time, in 2045, I will look up today and remember how primitive, how barbaric we were today that we would let people die. We will remember how terrible humanity was today that we just let people die. Immortality has been the biggest dream of humanity. From the very first book ever written, the Epic of Gilgamesh about immortality, or the Book of the Death by the Pharaohs, or the Chinese emperor who built the terracotta army to be immortal. So plan A is immortality, and we should be there in 20 to 30 years. But if you die, we have plan B. Plan B actually is cryopreservation. And actually, this was also impossible half a century ago, and until it began. And now there are 8 million humans who have been born thanks to cryonics, cryopreservation of the egg or of the sperm, or even the embryo. So 8 million humans have been already frozen as small babies. And I have been working on cryonics as well. And I actually have visited all the centers. This is in Russia, in Moscow, and the 2 in the USA. And actually, I froze the first Spanish person in the peninsula, in the Iberian Peninsula. Very sad, but he has a very cool life. He's very, very cool now. And we expect to reanimate him in 3 decades. My friend, Ray Kurzweil, he wrote also another fantastic book called Fantastic Voyage. Live long enough to live forever. Live long enough to live forever. Remember, in 10 years, we reach the Methuselarity or longevity escape velocity. And then in 20 more years, we basically rejuvenate people. So he talks about 3 bridges. Bridge 1, which is biohacking standard like here. Bridge 2, which is biotechnology that is just beginning. And bridge 3, which is nanotechnology in the 2030s. All companies are beginning to invest, like Google. Google created Calico, California Life Company, with the objective to cure death. Death is a technical problem, and death will have a technical solution. They have already invested $3 billion on curing aging. But if you don't like Google, maybe you like Microsoft. Microsoft said that in 10 years, they will cure cancer, because now we understand what cancer does to become immortal. And we will be able to replicate or eliminate that if we want, in the case of cancer. We will cure cancer in 1 decade. And maybe you don't like Microsoft or Google, but how about Facebook? Because Mark Zuckerberg and his wife, who is a biologist, who studied medicine, and she met Mark Zuckerberg at Harvard, they are donating all their fortune to cure all their diseases in this generation. And they said that their first daughter that was born 5 years ago, she will not die. Or not die of aging. She might die of other things, but not of aging, because we will cure aging. This is the largest industry humanity has ever seen. In the next 20 years, anti-aging will be bigger than anything else. Forget travel, forget food, forget computers, forget cars. The largest industry is anti-aging, and only began 5-10 years ago. In 2012, a Japanese scientist that I had the pleasure to visit in the University of Kyoto, he discovered that changing 4 genes, you control the age of a cell. Aging is a flexible process that you can modify, and you can make a young cell older or an old cell younger. Right now, he's doing experiments to cure macular degeneration of the eyes. Soon, we will reverse aging. These are called the 4 Yamanaka factors, 4 genes that control the aging process. But this is only the beginning of incredible things we are discovering. Also, 10 years ago, epigenetic clocks to measure your biological age were discovered. And a friend of mine in Argentina and other scientists in the USA and India, this is all global coordination, global cooperation. 3 countries, Argentina, India, and the USA, working on rejuvenating mice. This is fantastic. This is done scientifically today. Well, actually, last year. And then we have CRISPR. If you saw the Nobel Prize in chemistry, not medicine, of this year was CRISPR. By the way, it was invented in Spain, but that's another story. And then we have many new treatments, like changing old blood with new blood. These incredible treatments are just being discovered day by day, even during the COVID pandemic. I also organized a few days ago a fantastic event. I invite you to come to Las Vegas. This year it was virtual, next year will be real, which is called Revolution Against Aging and Death. And actually you can meet my friend Liz Parrish at the bottom of the right, who is the first person who is being biologically rejuvenated now, with 2 treatments. Not in the future, not tomorrow, now. She has been undergoing a treatment 4 years to be rejuvenated. And we published a protocol of what can be done today to rejuvenate yourself biologically. So I plan to be younger in the future, but not with a Russian application. I don't like FaceApp and the Russian application, no. I plan to be younger because we can reverse aging. Aging can be controlled, aging can be reversed, and aging can be cured. So I also welcome you to Madrid. I will be organizing an event with many people, like a robot, also Sofia, next June. And you will learn the latest of the latest on rejuvenation technologies, because that is the objective. And for that, we need to meditate. We always need to meditate. We have had meditation here. Why? Because there is yin and yang. And if you look, the yin yang inside has little yin yang and even little yin yang. We need to meditate. And I finish with this beautiful Chinese word that is also Japanese and Korean that means crisis. Crisis has two characters. The first one is danger, but the second one is opportunity. We are living in the most incredible time in human history to fulfill the first dream of humanity, immortality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jose. Give a big hand to Jose. Thank you, sir. Oh my God. Methuselah was this biblical character who lived 969 years old, and was also in Islamic and Judaistic and Christian scriptures. And he actually had several wives, several children. They all died off. He kept on until the great flood, and he was the oldest person in the Bible. Was he an alien?
No. No, he was human. But anyway, I don't truly believe he lived that long. But I do believe you and we can live 1,000 years.
Right. Okay, so if you allow me to play devil's advocate here. The way how I see it, immortality, is that there is a reason why we die. And the reason is that our lifetime exists long enough to work as a filtration mechanism, like an algorithm. We're filtering information, and the environment that is constantly sending information to your nervous system, and through that, the epigenetic change happens, and we pass on genes to our offspring. So there is a certain filtration mechanism that happens every generation, and we pass on certain genes. There are some mutations, and some of that is according to environment, and some of those things survive, and they kind of continue going on. And the way how I think about it in terms of systems is that the faster the change in the environment, the faster the iteration needs to be also, in terms of, adjusting or adapting. But if you and me are going to extend our lifespans by curing cancer and heart disease, and we get like 7 years, maybe with additional technology we could get maybe 3 extra years somehow on average, and maybe we cure aging, and then we have like 40 even plus, immortality forever. Now the question is, aren't we shooting ourselves in the foot? Because then we are not adapting quick enough. So in my imagination, we would have to start modifying ourselves directly. Is that what is happening? Do you really want to live forever? So that you actually need to modify yourself to be able to deal with whatever the environment is in 969 years from here?
Well, I think life is beautiful. So I not only want to extend life, but also expand life. Like, for example, I would like to speak Finnish. And I need to be immortal to be able to learn Finnish, for example. Or to go to Mars. Imagine all the things we are going to do in the future if we can try and keep on learning and keep on interacting. So yes, I want to be immortal.
Yeah, I mean, I also have all kinds of labels already today. I've been an entrepreneur, technologist, I've been a CTO, CEO, CIO, all kinds of things. I've been advisor to management, top management consultant, biohacker, many things. And in the end, when I look at it, like I might have infinite number of labels. So in terms of how I describe myself, the list would be pretty long, like 100, 200 years from now. And I think Tim Ferriss wrote in his books about this very specific idea that life is short and, you know, you can shortcut yourself to mastery. You don't have to practice something 10 years to get to that level. You can do that probably in a year, maybe in a few months. And you should constantly be challenging yourself to kind of acquire new skills and learn to navigate this nervous system. Because from the early age when you grow up, you're kind of a nervous system that figures out what's going on, and to be kind of, life is a process of awakening from a dream, to be able to kind of tap into, you know, the complexity around you. So I would imagine future humans are pretty complex in terms of their experiences.
We will be.
Yeah.
Also, we will be interconnected. Another company that Elon Musk is working, besides going to Mars, as he announced yesterday, in 4 years going to Mars, he said also in 1 decade we will have telepathy. What we are doing here is very primitive. Talking is very slow, very inefficient. All the things I would like to tell you are in my brain. And if I have telepathy, I'll answer your question in 1 second.
Directly.
You will ask another question in another second, and on the third second, we go to the beach party.
You know, Jose, I'm also a mystic, and I believe that we have telepathy already, in a way. And there is a lot of communication happening already, which is not only, you know, the words that we pronounce or the physical expressions we give, but there is something to human experience which is beyond description, beyond...
Sure. No, but I'm talking about really, really full telepathy. When we have this facility, I will download or upload Finnish into my brain. Like, if you have seen The Matrix, the things that happen in The Matrix will be possible once we connect our brains to internet.
But I can do that already with some Google technology, like an earpiece that is simultaneously listening to you and it's translating to me, and I can answer in my own language and it's translating to you. But it's still too, I mean, it's like a modem internet connection, like some kind of...
like 20 years ago,
not digital, right?
Like with Kaka. That's Kaka technology.
Do you know, by the way, what Kaka is?
In Spanish, yes.
What do you know what it's in Finnish?
Dogs poop.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's literally
dog
shit. Oh, yeah, you know. It's literally shit. I don't know if I want to... Yeah, the future is exciting and the future also. Really, in these exciting, there's an frightening also. In these times, there is an amplification of... I see that a lot of gaining... you know, interest in these transhumanistic ideas from a very different place. You know, they fear the future. They see that that's some kind of plan, you know, to control us. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't believe in any of these conspiracies, but I think the future is exciting. I think people enjoy being alive, being healthy, and we can have more of this. Also, this is not mandatory. I want to make it clear. If someone wants to die, you are free, you can die. But I don't think many people in the right mind want to die, especially if you are in physical and mental good condition. Because the problem is when you are old, you are decrepit, you are in bad physical and mental condition, then you might think death is a relief.
You know, let me give you another thought. You are right, absolutely right. And actually, we don't want to live forever. We want to live a good life. And the context from which we judge what a good life would be is the experience you're having right now. So when you're extending yourself in different ways, or you change also over time, probably your idea of good life when you were 20 was very different from what is now. And what next decade you might think also differently what is a good life. But you still want to live a good life. And for you, it might mean that your physical body doesn't come on the way of your ability to produce ideas, communicate, mobilize yourself. But I started this morning with Stoic philosophy, and Stoic philosophy is basically, it puts virtue in front of health and wealth and all kinds of things. Basically, sometimes you have to sacrifice your health. Sometimes it's okay to accept the situation as it is. And it's a very humbling approach to life. The idea there is that you should always do what is right. You should never lie. You should always do what is right. And sometimes it means that you will sacrifice yourself in the process. So, but in the end, it's also about accepting things. And one thing that you learn from Stoic philosophy is basically that whatever your condition is, whatever horrible has happened to you, there's always hope. And I remember a good friend of mine from Thailand who I was working with when the tsunami came. Remember the tsunami in Thailand some years ago? He lost his house, he lost his wife, and he also lost his health because he was diagnosed cancer that year. And when I spoke to him, he said that this was the best thing that happened to him ever, because the only way from the bottom of the bottom was up always. And I think that's the, relief of human experience, that things can always improve. And you have definitely today given us ideas and inspiration how things could in different ways improve, isn't it? So,
well, as a transhumanist, we believe in three super things: super longevity, immortality, super intelligence, artificial intelligence, and super happiness. Super happiness. We should live longer, more intelligent lives, and happier lives.
I love that. I think happiness needs to be a new thing that we are measuring in terms of growth. So growth is not only GDP and whatever, monetary or physical assets that we are looking at, but it should also be happiness of humankind. So thank you very much, Jose. I look forward to waving some Spanish flags in the after party and invite all of you there as well. The bar is still open. Enjoy until 6 o'clock. See you at 6:30 at Beatsy. And it's been amazing. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining for Parker Summit.